so this is another one of my videos of me reading The Midnight Gang. So we finished on chapter 12 and now we're starting on chapter 13, Funk. The bigger dream, the better, said George. I am talking, said Amber to George. Sorry, replied George. It's sorry, miss, purred Robin. So you better start thinking of what your dream is, Tom, said Amber. Something you've always wanted to do. Have you got one? I wish school dinners were nicer. Boring, said Robin. Well, I guess I'd like to be excused from cricket matches from now on. Tedious. Well then, I wish I didn't have double maths on Wednesday afternoon. Please do wake me up when he's finished. I don't know. I can't think of anything. Come on, Tom, said George. Surely you can think of something. Thinking is not my strong point, but I even think of something. Sadly, though, the boy's mind was blank. It seems I was right all along, exclaimed Amber. Sorry, Tom, you are just not cut out for the Midnight Gang. Your trial period is now over. No, protested Tom. Yes, replied Amber. Give me another chance, please. I can think of something. No, said the girl. There is no point in you being in the Midnight Gang unless you can think of a dream you want to come true. Let's vote. I say we don't let Tom join our gang. Boys, do you agree? I vote Tom can stay, said Robin. What? Demanded Amber. As long as he agrees to push the wheelchair until further notice. Yes, if Tom pushes the wheelchair, he can stay, agreed George. You are two so annoying, said Amber. Right, it looks like you are staying and pushing. Yes, exclaimed Tom. Right, come on, get up. The boy did as he was told. Now spin me around and push fast. The boy pushed Amber along the corridor as fast as he could. Faster, she shouted. Chapter 14, Deep Freeze. The four children travelled along the corridor after corridor in the basement of Bella&Franchy Hospital. They passed the boiler room. Tom peered in as he struggled to push Amber in her wheelchair. Inside was a giant water tank the size of a swimming pool. Coming in and out of the tank were huge copper pipes which rattled and hissed away. Next, the children passed a dark, dank storeroom. Again, Tom peered in. It seemed to be full of nothing more than old junk. A ripped hospital mattress was lying on the floor. The gang pressed on. Finally, a sign ahead of them read, Deep Freeze. Here we are, announced Amber. Tom was only wearing his pink frilly nightdress. You're joking, he exclaimed. What do you mean? Replied Amber. We can't go in deep freeze, protested the boy, as they opened the door to what a giant freezer, which stored tons of hospital food, Amber said. We're not going in the deep freeze, we are going to the North Pole. The North Pole? Asked Tom. He looked towards Robin and George. They did not react. What do you mean? We are going to the North Pole? It's always been my dream to be the first girl to go to the North Pole, said Amber. As soon as I am out of the hospital, I'm going to be a world-famous explorer. I'm going to be the first girl to reach the South Pole too. I want to sail solo around the world. I want to climb the highest mountain, dive down the very bottom of the sea. I want to have adventures beyond your wildest dreams. Tom stood silently listening, wishing he could dream this big. He had always been quiet and even rather timid at school. Tom never wanted to stand out. Now the boy was being asked to reveal his big dream, and to his shame he realized he didn't have one. Then Tom asked, we are going to where you are exploring your broken arm and legs. George gave Tom a look, as if to say, don't go there. As for Amber, she looked extremely annoyed at being asked the question. If you must know, she began, it was a mountain climbing accident. Well, that isn't strictly true, is it, dear? Said Robin. The girl was starting to look uncomfortable. Well, all right, I was doing a mountain climbing training. That still sounded impressive to Tom. I wouldn't exactly call it mountain climbing training, said Robin. What would you call it then, clever clogs? Snapped the girl. I would call it falling off the top bunk, answered Robin drily. Tom tried hard not to laugh, but then he just couldn't help himself. He burst into helpless laughter. Ha 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 ha! laughed George. Within moments, the rather dry Robin was laughing too. Silence, the lot of you! Screamed Amber. Seeing how angry was making the only girl, the boys laughed even more. I'm waiting, she said, sounding rather like a teacher. Eventually the laughter died down and Amber announced, now, come on, you silly boys. We are going to be the very first children to reach the North Pole. George beckoned to Tom to help him, and together the pair slid open a huge metal door to the freezer room. A blast of Arctic air hit the four full in the face. As the cold air met the warm air, a white mist was formed. At first this mist covered everything. Slowly it cleared, and last the children saw the most magnificent sight. Chapter 15. The North Pole. The children's faces lit up as they saw the North Pole. It wasn't the real North Pole, but it was an incredible recreation of it. Inside the hospital freezer room, there were inches of snow on the ground. It must have been made from all the flakes of ice that gathered in on the boxes of fish fingers in the bag of frozen peas. There were snowdrifts and ice caves, and even an igloo. A fan stuck to the ceiling and swirled the air around, blowing little pieces of ice around the room. It looked like it was snowing. The snow sparkled in fluorescent light in the corridor like diamond dust. Wow, said Tom. It's beautiful, said Amber. This girl had always seemed to be the toughest of the group, but now Tom could see Amber had tears swelling in her eyes. Please tell me what you see, said Robin. In this moment of wonder, the children had quite forgotten that since the operation in his eyes, Robin could not see a thing. His bandages had to stay on for weeks yet. It's perfect, replied Amber. How? Asked Robin. Robin, there is snow everywhere, said Tom. It's falling from the sky. I can feel it on my face. And there's a snowdrift and even an igloo, said Tom. And I do believe it. Look here, Amber. Laying on the far side of the igloo was a Union Jack flag. It was attached to the wooden pole that looked as if it's been snapped off by a building. Perhaps it had been snapped off the side of this very building, the Lord Front Hospital. That must be so. You can place it on the snow, said George, like adventurers do. To prove to everyone that you really were here, place what in the snow, demanded Robin eagerly. A flag, replied Tom. Sorry, I should have said, pass it to me, ordered Amber. Tom carefully placed the flagpole in her hand and the girl tried to place it down, but her arms were in casts so she couldn't. I can't do it, said Amber, clearly frustrated. Let me help, said Tom. No, she snapped. Let's forget the whole thing. This is stupid. It's not stupid, said Tom. I thought you said the Midnight Gang was all about children working together. It is, Amber replied grumpily. Then let me help you. In fact, let's all help. Let's all do it together. Good idea, said George. He guided Robin's hands to the pole, and together they all stuck the end into the deep snow in the middle of the run. I hereby declare myself Amber Florence Harriet Latty to be the first ever girl to reach the North Pole. Hooray! Cheered the boys. Thank you, began Amber grandly. I really do need to thank a few people. Oh, here she goes, said George. This may take some time, hissed Robin to Tom. Amber loves making a speech. Thank you mostly to myself, without whom none of this would have been possible. So humble, remarked Robin. But I would also like to take this opportunity to thank my old friends and a new friend in the Midnight Gang. It might not have been the real North Pole, but the look of pride on the girl's face was certainly real. Tom looked across his mini Arctic wasteland. As the mist cleared, the boy saw the hospital field that was normally stored in the freezer room that had been piled up to one side, the cover in ice to disguise it. This begged an important question. Who had done all this? Just then, a shadow passed the gang. Someone or something had moved past the doorway. "What's that?" asked Tom, a note of terror in his voice. "What's what?" asked George. "Something's there," he spluttered. "Where?" asked Amber. "Outside the door," answered Tom. "It was nothing," said Amber. "If it was nothing, then go out and have a look," said Tom. There was silence for a moment. "Well, I can hardly go out and check in my wheelchair now, can I?" replied Amber. "I could go out, but the looking apart I would find hard," said Robin. All eyes turned to George. "I would love to go just as soon as I finish this tub of ice cream," said George. He had chocolate ice cream around his face, and he dipped his hand into the tub to get another scoop. Now all eyes turned to Tom. "I can't go," he exclaimed. "Why ever not?" demanded Amber. The boy looked down to his pink frilly nightie. "In this?" "That's hardly a good excuse," replied Amber. "Girls have to wear nighties. Let's take a vote. All in favour for Tom, who's going to see who it is, put their hands up." Predictably, the other two boys raised their hands. Mine would be raised too if they could. "So that's settled then," said the girl grandly. "Off you go, Tom." "But," he protested, "do you want to be made a permanent member of the Midnight Gang or not?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, but then get out there," she ordered. "Right now." The ice underfoot was getting slippery now, and Tom nearly fell over with each step. Slowly he reached the doorway into the freezer room. Tom had peered out to the left, then he couldn't see anything. Then he peered to the right. Out of the shadows came something unmistakably figure of a polar bear. "Grrr," it growled. "Ah!" screamed the boy. Chapter 16, Polar Bear. It wasn't a real polar bear, it was a man in a polar bear suit. There was no best popular polar bear suit either. This one was made of cotton wool that looked as if it had been scavenged from the hospital. There were 2 holes for the eyes, and ears were made of sponges, and the nose was made from an end of a stethoscope. The claws were curtain hooks, and the fangs were nothing more than folded pieces of white cardboard from a medicine box. On seeing the polar bear up close, Tom didn't feel so scared anymore. He knew it was a person in a suit. The person inside pulled the hood off. It was the porter. On seeing the man's misshapen face, the boy screamed, "Ah!" "Hello, children," said Porter cheerfully. "I am so sorry I'm late." Tom was breathing in and out far too fast now. "What?" he panted. "Slow down, young sir," said the man. "It's not me. It's me. It's only me, the porter." "So it's you behind this?" "Yes. It took me weeks to sculpt the Arctic wasteland from the ice freezer room. Thankfully, it had been defrosted for years, so there was plenty of snow to play with." Tom was bemused. He had been told that the Midnight Gang was for kids only a secret from grown-ups. Why on earth was this scary-looking man involved? "Hello, Porter," said Amber as George and Robin struggled to wheel her to the entrance of the freezer room. "Good evening, young Miss Amber," replied the man. "I was planning to pop out from behind the igloo dressed as a polar bear and surprise you, but I just couldn't sew the ears on in time." The man offered up the hood. One of the black sponge ears was dangling by a thread. "It's brilliant," exclaimed Amber. "It's your best one ever. I'd hug you if I could." The porter gently patted her on the head with the cotton wool glove. "That is sweet. Thank you, young lady." The wish to go to the North Pole took rather a lot of thinking on my part. I never thought when I was admitted to the hospital to have my tonsils out and I would end up meeting a polar bear, remarked George. It's not a real one, George, said Robin. Yes, I realised that, said George, soon after he took off the hood. Oh dear, purred Robin. But Porter, why are you doing all this? Demanded Tom. Me? Oh, well, I suppose I've always liked to help the Midnight Gang, right from the start, replied the man with a glint in his eye. I've just got to be careful Matron doesn't find out, or I'd get fired on the spot. So why do it? Well, I feel it's worth the risk. I believe that if patients in the hospital are happy, then there is a much better chance of them getting better. That makes sense, thought Tom before asking. But what if they don't? Even if patients don't get better, they might feel better, and that's worth something. It certainly is, agreed Robin. I am just a lowly porter, the lowest of the low, slurred the man. You're not the lowest of the low, interrupted Amber. That's kind, he replied. There's always the big bog cleaner, added George, not entirely helpfully. Well, I'm sure that makes him feel a lot better, said Robin. Bog cleaning is important if smelly work, young sir. I never had the chance to go to university or to study to be a doctor. That's what I would have really loved to do with my life. I spent a lot of my young life in a hospital, not unlike this one, trying to straighten this. Move that, he said, indicating his misshapen face. None of it worked. I missed out on a proper education. I would have loved to have gone to school, but I was told it was better I stay at the hospital where I wouldn't frighten other children. Suddenly Tom felt a hot surge of guilt. The boy had screamed when he'd seen the porter, not once but twice. I've been in the hospital now for 2 months with these blasted broken arms and legs of mine, said Amber, and so many children have come and gone from the ward in that time. So many dreams have come true, and none of us could have done it without you. The porter looked a little bashful. Why, thank you, Miss Amber. I have to admit there have been some absolute beauties, haven't there? Tell me, demanded Tom. Chapter 17, Telling Stories. The Midnight Gang had a thrilling night of racing driving, began Amber. In wheelchairs, continued the porter. One young lad called Henry couldn't walk at all. He had been born that way. The young Mr. Henry desperately wanted to be a racing driver, so I rewired his electric wheelchair to go super fast, 70 miles an hour. He was a blur when he whizzed past, but of course the other children in the ward wanted to go. It wasn't fair, said George. Lucky old Henry. Lucky, said Robin. He couldn't walk. I admit that wasn't so lucky. So I found some old rusty wheelchairs that had been left down here to rot, slurred the porter. I fixed them up with engines that I borrowed from the lawnmowers in the garden shed. All the children got racing, a number painted on the back of their pyjamas. I used a tea towel to start as a starter flag, and off they went. We raced down around the hospital corridors all night, exclaimed George. I came third. There were only 3 children in the race, remarked Amber. Yes, but I still came third. Yes, I crashed 103 times, but still enjoyed it, added Robin. Somehow I came in second. Although the children had started shivering in the freezing room, they couldn't stop sharing their stories of the Midnight Gang after dark adventures. Snow fell from the ceiling as they told their fantastic stories, every one of them true. There was a little girl in the ward called Valerie, said Amber. No more than 10 years old, obsessed with history, wants to be an archaeologist when she grows up. Her dream was to explore the treasures of ancient Egypt. How did you do that? Asked Tom. Well, I borrowed miles of bandage from the pharmacy, said the porter. Then all the other children wrapped each other in bandages so they would look like Egyptian mummies. I made a pyramid out of empty cardboard boxes, and they all waited inside when everything was in place. Young Valerie found her way into the pyramid and pretended to be the first archaeologist to find the pharaoh's tomb. Making my way back to the children's ward, I couldn't see a thing, so I got lost, said Robin. I wandered into the wrong wards and ended up giving up old dears a fright. They thought a mummy had come back to life. Ha ha. That sounds so exciting, said Tom. I love the idea of having a spooky adventure like that. It's a shame you weren't here with us last Halloween then, young Mr. Tom, said the porter. What happened then? Asked Amber. Yes, none of us four were at the hospital back then, added Robin. Do tell us. Well, there was a young girl in the wards called Wendy. She admitted to the hospital to have an operation. Wendy hated being in here for so long, as she was missing not just Halloween when she loved to go out trick-or-treating, but also her ballroom dance classes. So what did you do? Asked Tom. I thought, why not combine two? So I organised a ballroom dancing competition that started at midnight. That doesn't sound at least a bit spooky, said Amber. Well, young Miss Amber, the twist was all the children danced with skeletons. Real ones, asked Tom, rather disturbed. No, of course not. The plastic model ones from the doctors that they have in their rooms. Thank goodness for that. And I let Wendy win, of course. At least it wasn't one of the skeletons, said Robin. That could have been awkward. Of course you three will all be here at the hospital when the midnight gang went serving, prompted the porter. Oh yes, a boy called Gerald had lost a leg after a horrible road accident, said Amber. That's awful, said Tom. That was also awful. What was also awful was that the matron told him he had now absolutely no chance of being a professional surfer. Terrible woman, said Robin. But the midnight gang were having none of it, continued the girl. We helped Gerald up onto one of the porter's trolleys, then working together we raced him up and down the stairs all night like he was surfing the perfect wave. Cool, said Tom. Let's not forget the young fellow who wanted to have tea with the Queen, slurred the porter. Sandy was his name. So how did you do that? Asked Tom. I'm not sure how I looked much like the Queen, said Robin. I had a shower curtain draped over my shoulders and a bedpan on my head as a crown. I was in charge of the Queen Corrigus, announced George proudly. How? Asked Tom. We snuck around the hospital's wards at night and collected up the fluffiest slippers. Then we attached them to wires on a pole and moved them around and yapped like a dog. It was unbelievably lifelike, said Robin sarcastically. Sandy really enjoyed it, said George. He didn't enjoy being hit in the head with your pole. That wasn't my fault, protested George. Those corgis were out of control. Quite, said Robin. Just last week we had a boy in the ward who desperately wanted to be a comedian, said Amber. David was his name, but he wasn't funny, added Robin. Painfully unfunny, actually. When telling a joke, David would say the punchline before the setup. He would say, tomato sauce salad dressing. Why did the tomato blush? What? Asked Tom. Oh, it gets worse. There is an owl in there. Who? Who's there? Knock, knock. Make it stop, said Tom. This is the best one. You're under a vest. Freeze. What did the policeman say to his tummy? I don't get it, said George. It should have been, what did the policeman say to his tummy? Freeze, you're under a vest, said Amber. I still don't get it, replied George. Bless poor Mr. David, said the porter. He was blissfully unaware of how unfunny he was, but the boy longed to hear the laughter. So what did you do? Asked Tom. I borrowed a cylinder of laughing gas, began the man. What's that? Said Tom. Doctors use it to treat pain, and it's called laughing gas because it also makes people laugh. So without David knowing, I pumped into a room full of expectant fathers waiting to hear news from the maternity ward. Then I sent young Mr. David in there. He told all of his fronts back to front jokes, and surprise, surprise, expectant fathers all laughed absolutely everything he said. One of me favourites was when the Midnight Gang swam with dolphins, remembered George. Where was this? Asked Tom. In the hospital's water tank, of course, replied the porter. It's huge, the size of a swimming pool. What about the dolphins? I planted borrowing a real one from the aquarium, but thought better of it. Instead, with the help of the children, we painted some inflatable pillows to look like dolphins. Then I used some ropes and pulleys to pull them along the water. That's the little patient Mohammed. I think he was only 6, but he loved every minute of it. The safari was tops, said George. Yes, that was for all these twins, Hugh and Jack, said the porter. Hugh had a kidney failure and Jack was giving his twin brother one of his kidneys. They were both in the hospital for a while because of their operations. So for their Midnight Gang adventure, the other children in the ward made animal costumes out of things they found in the hospital. The house became an elephant trunk and the furry bath mat met a lion's mane. The prosthetic leg, a giraffe's neck. We borrowed a mobility scooter. That was their jeep. Then the twins drove around the hospital at night with the other children and leaped out at them dressed as wild animals. Marvellous, said Tom. Simply marvellous. So have you two boys had your dreams come true yet? Okay, so that's it for tonight. Next time we're going to be reading chapter 18, Ba 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 Bomb. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you have a very good night's sleep. Bye!